Greetings, everyone. Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC. I hope you're all doing really well today. So we are going to walk through three very similarly spec'd knives. And when I say similarly spec'd, I mean they're all about between $30 $35. They are all 3-inch blades, or just darn near 3-inch blades. Speaking of blades, they're all in D2 steel. They are all opened via thumb stud, and they are all liner locks. So on paper, these are three very, very similar knives, but they're not the same, right? That doesn't make them the same in terms of a number of categories, whether that's carry or ergos or blade shape, whatever. So just because they might look the same on paper doesn't mean they all are equal in terms of whether or not they're the right knife for you if you're looking for something in this category. So I thought these would be fun to walk through. These are all from manufacturers that certainly I trust, that I think make quality knives. They're all good knives too. This isn't any sort of one. This isn't some sort of blade battle or something like that. I mean, these are all good knives. I do have a favorite among the three, and I'll mention it at the end. Yeah, these are all good blades, and you'd be fine getting any of them. This video is more about trying to help you figure out, of these three, or if you're looking for something in this sort of category in terms of the specs that I just rattled off, which one might be the right one for you. So this isn't going to be a full review of all three of these knives.
Grazie.
It's kind of going to be sort of a pros and cons of each one, and kind of what I like and dislike, and some of the observations I've had on them as we go through. So, all right, so you saw the title, I think, so let's go ahead and introduce the knives that we're going to be checking out today. The first is the Ontario Rat number 2. The second is the CJRB Feldspar. This is obviously the smaller version. And then we've got the QSP Penguin, right? And as you can see, right, despite their specs, as I mentioned, these are all three very, very different looking knives. So we're going to walk through them in no particular order. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to rattle off the more specs or really that many more specs as we go through each of these, because you've got the bulk of them at this point. I am going to mention weight, though, as we go through each one, because I think that does matter a little bit. So we'll talk through that. So we're going to go through these in no particular order. And I thought I would start with the Ontario Rat Model 2, affectionately oftentimes known as the R2D2, as this one is in D2 steel, as I mentioned. So weighing at 2.75 ounces, this is basically a stalwart of the kind of medium to smaller sized budget EDC category, right? This knife has been loved for many, many years, and often gets a lot of praise. And in fact, I like this. Like I said, I like this knife a lot as well, and for good reason. It's just a darn good tool for just everyday carry across the board. It's built tough. It's got a great pedigree, great reputation, and all of that, like I said, is deserved. Now, I particularly like on this knife the blade. It's got pretty darn reasonable blade stock. Could maybe be a hair thinner, but it's pretty reasonable. But it comes down to a very, very slicey, thin behind the edge. I mean, this is just a really good slicer. And, again, I think it's kind of got an attractive blade. It's a little unique looking in some ways for a, sort of a standard drop point, but you've got this flat here. You've got a nice little bit of belly there. You've got a tip for piercing if you need to do any of that. But it's a cool blade. A lot to like of it, and I think it's one of the best parts of the knife. Now, the other thing that I really enjoy on this knife, yeah, and I enjoy that with my Rat number 1 as well, and that's the sound. This is just it's got a fun sound opening. Does that matter materially to the knife? No. But it is, for those of us in the knife hobby, I think, if acoustics kind of like that matter to you, it matters to me, and I kind of like it. I think it just, yeah, it makes a nice sound when it opens. And, the opening action is really great. The close is pretty good. It's not meant to be any sort of drop shutty kind of, action piece or anything. And part of that is it's running on phosphor bronze washers. So that's another piece to this that I like. And I think it adds to sort of the durability, the toughness of this particular knife. Phosphor bronze, they didn't go Teflon or anything like that. And honestly, I'm kind of moving back to enjoying phosphor bronze as opposed to the ball bearing boom that we've sort of seen, particularly in budget knives, really to achieve that fun action that everybody likes. But I think we kind of miss out on that hydraulic smoothness of the phosphor bronze, and the fact that they're just so robust. You don't have to worry about to get them dirty or gunky or anything. And as far as opening actions, except when I fail it right there, pretty, it's good. Like I said, it's not going to drop shut on you or anything, but it fires open just fine reliably every time if you actually do it right. So there you go. So enjoy that in terms of action and sort of makeup with regards to its pivot area. Now, ergos on this knife, also very, very good. Fits well in hand, no hot spots really off the pocket clip. You can choke up if you need to because of the way this sort of ricasso is set up here. It gives you a little bit more of a, ability to kind of really get in there. But just a really ergonomic knife, and one that's, for its size, fills the hand, feels good. Yeah, lots to like about it. So really do enjoy this. You do have stainless steel liners, etc., etc. Now, one of the things that makes this unique among the three that we're going to look at right now is the carry on this. So this is a 4-way tip up, tip down carryable knife. And that's pretty darn cool if you're looking for sort of maximum versatility, right? That you'd be able to, especially if you're a lefty, being that this is thumb stud and it's got a pretty generous kind of access on both sides. It's a liner lock, as I mentioned, obviously, as they all are. This is just a really well-rounded knife. You could get this for just about anybody and not have to worry about whether or not they'd be able to use it comfortably, because I think they would. So the 4-way, tip up, tip down carry is really a nice touch on this. That said, speaking of the clip, and I think this is one of the things I like least about this knife, is the clip. It's a decent clip. It does the job, but it's a little firm, in my opinion, and it's not deep carry at all, not even close. So, is that the be-all and end-all? Again, no, it's not. But if that's something you're looking for, that is something that these other two do offer. And this is, I think, the downside of this particular knife, one of the downsides. The other little thing that kind of bugs me, and I don't know if it's just mine or if it's all of them. I've only handled this one because it's the only one I've owned. But it's a little bit off center, as you can probably see right there. But it also, I can touch the tip of my blade. Ooh, there you go. Look at that. I just cut my finger right on camera.
Now, this really pisses me off to no end.
So you can definitely, and that's a little bit of a safety issue, I think. Obviously, you can cut yourself with the tip of this knife because when it's closed, and that's not great. And again, I don't know if that's just me. Maybe I have very weak, paper thin skin, but I did just cut myself, and it's not bleeding, thankfully, here on video. But yeah, the access to the tip there, not a big fan of that. So there you go. That's kind of the pros and cons of this particular knife that is, like I said, in many ways a darling of the EDC community, and for a lot of reasons. It's a very, very good knife, but it does have a couple foibles in my view. So there you go, something to think about. All right, so that's what we've got here with the Ontario Rat 2 in D2. Now, let's talk about the second knife here, which is the CJRB Feldspar. And again, this is the smaller version with that 3-inch blade. I went with that Jade G10 here because I think with the sort of brassy copper highlights, I think it's kind of cool. I think it just looks kind of neat. I know not everybody likes that Jade G10, but the beauty of Jade is, or natural color G10, whatever, the beauty of that is you can grit dye this to any color you want. And you're not fighting a dark color and trying to make it lighter or anything like that. It really does make this easy to personalize if that's your thing. So very, very cool. All right, so the Feldspar is 2.82 ounces, which, comparatively very, very similar again to the Rat 2, just slightly heavier. It's got a great attractive blade here. You've got your CJRB logo, but, very, very nice, tall, flat grinds. Here's what I'll say about the blade. I like it. I think it looks good, and it cuts decent. CJRB, and kind of Artisan to a degree, although Artisan Cutlery is sort of the parent company for CJRB. CJRB is their budget line. You know what, Artisan, I'm going to leave Artisan out of this. I think CJRB in general, not always the thinnest grinds, not always the sharpest out of the box. That's been something I've noticed for a number of CJRBs that I have owned. And part of that, I think, is they start with stock. Sometimes it's a little too thick. And like I said, they just don't, I mean, this is still a relatively new knife in terms of what I've used it for, and it's just not that sharp. I mean, I can do this, and I'm not really worried about cutting myself. So it just didn't come out of the box, unlike unlike the Rat 2, which cut me with just touching the very end of the tip there. So at any rate, that's a complaint I do have with the CJRB, is that you're probably going to want to do some. It's not like it comes dull or anything. I don't mean that to be the case. I mean, it's definitely sharp, but it's just not as sharp as, frankly, the other two that we'll be talking about today. So that's maybe one of the complaints I have here with the Feldspar. Now, in terms of opening, this is running on ceramic ball bearings. So it's the only one of the two, or of the three, I'm sorry, that will be running on ceramic ball bearings. And as I mentioned, I was kind of leaning back more and more towards phosphor bronze these days. Fine. That's fine. But that doesn't mean this doesn't have a good action. In fact, it has a great action. I like the sound that this makes when it opens. It's got a very nice close to it. Yeah. I mean, this is just a very, very nice action for a $30 knife, basically. Caged ceramic ball bearings and a $30 knife in D2 with this nice G10, really nice fit and finish. I mean, this is, there's a lot to this package. I think that is pretty great. So I like that a lot. I think it's got a fantastic action, and, again, ball bearings, fine, whatever. I like them just fine. Despite my previous statement. They are just fine, but there you go. And it does have a very nice detent. That is one thing I do always give credit. I know I ding them on how sharp they come, but CJRBs always have a great detent. They are always dialed in really well, whether it's thumb stud or flipper or whatever. I've always been impressed with the dialed in nature of their actions. So good. I like that a lot. Now, you do have some stainless steel in here. As I mentioned, they did a little bit of weight reduction and some skeletonization. I don't know if you can see that. There you go, a little bit. So there you go, kind of standard there. Now, ergos. The ergos on this knife also pretty darn good. I don't think they're quite as good as the Rat 2 there. The pocket clip's a little proud in terms of kind of sticking out this way. It's not as it's kind of a big pocket clip, I guess I would say. I know it doesn't look super big, but it kind of feels that way when it's kind of sticking out there. So you do get a little bit of hot spot off of that pocket clip. Now, I've said in many of my reviews, hot spots are very subjective, but I do think anybody holding this is going to notice that the clip is there. So there's a little bit of that. But that said, the clip on this knife is well done. It's stainless steel. It's got recessed flush-mounted screws. It's got flush, flat panhead screws, but it's also recessed into the G10. Excuse me, the G10, which I think is pretty cool. And on the flip side, it is reversible. It is only tip up, but it is reversible, which is cool. And one of the things, so, it's reversible, but you get this little dent here on this side. Does it make a huge difference aesthetically? No, not really, but it's weird. You kind of got the screw and then a hole. And it just sort of, I don't know, it looks like this side on the show side, there's a little bit that's unfinished there. So again, pretty nitpicky on a $35 knife, but it is something I think to note. So, there you go. Overall, yeah, I mean, this is a really great option, and maybe it's a little boring. I mean, that's one of the things I've heard leveled against the Feldspar, is that it just looks kind of boring. I actually don't think so. I think it's pretty organic, and with the number of colorways and things you can get, and I'm sorry, I didn't mention that on the R2D2, you can get that in a bunch of different colorways, as well as you can with all three of these, frankly. That's maybe some similar that they all have. So you can get a bunch of different scale colors and things like that. And then I said, if you get that JG10, you can do what you want with it. So I don't think it's boring. I actually think it's kind of organic and flowing looking. It's kind of a contrast here between this sort of sharp, pointy blade and this sort of rounded, smoothed kind of G10 scales. So anyways, there you go. Those are kind of some of the things I like and dislike there on the CJRB, I guess technically Artisan, but CJRB smaller Feldspar. So cool knife, and definitely one to check out if something you're interested in. Okay, the final knife of the three that we're going to check out here is the QSP Penguin, and this is one that I had a lot of requests from viewers to review, and rightfully so. A lot of people really do like this knife for the price. It's, I think, of the three, maybe the cheapest, depending on what variant you get. I went with this sort of carbon fibery sticker look, which is fine, but there's obviously some micarta, there's G10 versions, whatever. The most notable difference between this knife and the other the other two that we've looked at is the blade shape, right? This is not a drop point. This is a Wharncliffe, which is neat. And again, not something you could tell if you were just looking at specs on paper. Wharncliffe, meaning just sort of this straight flat across, that has a lot of benefits depending on what your use is going to be. And so if you're going to be doing a lot of these kind of draw cuts or things like that, that Wharncliffe style blade, and you are, because of the rounding they did here, able to just kind of get up and do some of this, whether you're cutting out, whatever, that's pretty darn handy. And so if that's, it also has some benefits for scraping and doing some of those things. So if you're looking for that kind of blade shape, but also in this price range, spec range, etc., definitely a Wharncliffe option may be what you want to look towards, and the QSP Penguin maybe just that. Now this one also does weigh a bit more than the other two. This one is 3.17 ounces, so it's the only one that crosses the 3 ounce line. But again, and honestly, and I think because of the Wharncliffe, this I think has a slightly longer than 3-inch blade as well. I think it's like 3.06 or something, so it's just barely over 3 inches. So I felt like it was still pretty darn similar. So there you go. So now, action. Also, interesting that this is running on washers. In fact, I think, I haven't taken this apart, but it looks like it's one of those where it's got sort of 2 washers on each side, 2 thin phosphor bronze washers on each side. That's okay. It's neither here nor there. A lot of companies do that. It's got a nice action. It's definitely the weakest detent. See what I did there? Yeah, it's the weakest detent of all of them, in my opinion, and was something that kind of immediately turned me off a little bit when I bought it. I was a little disappointed by that, because I've had people say, oh man, such an amazing action on the Penguin. And again, it flicks open great, and it closes just fine, especially for being on washers. It's got a very nice, smooth, and pretty easy open and close. So definitely like that. But that detent is a little unsatisfying. It's a little squishy and a little soft. But again, for the money, I don't know. Maybe it matters to you. Maybe it doesn't. So that's what we've got there. Now, ergos and carry as it relates to this particular knife, the ergos are good. In fact, I think this is right up there in terms of being as good as the Rat 2. Feels very good. Not much from the pocket clip in terms of hot spots or anything like that. Feels really good in hand. This is of the 3, the only one that you really can't choke up on. It's got a nice choil there, but it's just not really conducive to kind of choking up. So again, this is going to be more if you're going to be choking up doing those draw cuts or something, but you're not going to be really doing kind of that because, yeah, there's sharpened blade there. So again, I think, from an ergo standpoint, yeah, lots to like. Feels good in hand, very comfortable. It's nice.
Cool.
All right, now the pocket clip. This one has the most interesting of the 3 pocket clips in some ways. It's definitely, deep carry, which is nice. They didn't recess the screws or use flathead screws, but they did. But the way the pocket clip goes in, it sort of goes in. It inserts into the scale, if that makes sense. You can see it there, and in fact, you can see on the other side, because this is tip up left right side carry. See if you can see that. It's kind of hard because this is black. Do I have a little flashlight? I don't know if I use this one. I do, but it is dead. So basically it's, there's a little opening over here, so you're able to switch that around, and they keep the screws here on this side. So, you plunk the screws out, take it out, swap it, put it down. I think that's a pretty cool. I've not really seen that on a ton of knives. I've seen it out there, but that's pretty neat. One, because it's just super clean. It just looks clean. And when in this, as opposed to this, right, where I mentioned I wasn't a huge fan of kind of the way that gets left, when the clip isn't on that side, these 2 screws just look like part of the knife, right? So you get something that kind of looks in design in terms of kind of how it's all working together there. So yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. And again, the clip is very nice, deep carry. It's got nice spring to it, and on this, at least on this smooth carbon fiber sticker, it slides in and out of the pocket very, very easily. So there you go. I definitely like that about the Penguin. So here we go. I promised you I would pick among the 3 here. We have the Ontario Rat number 2, the CJRB small Feldspar, and the QSP Penguin. Which of these 3 do I like? Well, This one I like, but it did just cut me, so it's no. I mean, I do like this one, but because of I think what I mentioned around the pocket clip not being centered, which kind of bugs me, not one of my favorites. It's a great knife and definitely one that I know a lot of people really love, and I like it. I like it. I just don't love it. So there you go. That's that. The QSP Penguin, sorry, it's the detent. The detent really kind of ruined this one for me, as well as the Wharncliffe. I'm not a huge Wharncliffe blade guy. I just don't find them particularly useful for me. So yeah, this one, apart from also being very good value, just isn't for me. So those two get the pocket sand in the eye, if you will.
Pocket sand.
The winner for me among the three is the CJRB Feldspar. I would have liked to see it on a nice phosphor bronze washer action, and I definitely would like a little bit of thinner stock and perhaps coming a little sharper from the factory. But beyond that, it's just a really, really great EDC option. And for me, feels in line with sort of the things, the kind of mild-mannered specs that I tend to enjoy for my style of knives, particularly if it's in this sort of budget category. So this is the winner for me. But these are all, like I said, these are great knives. And I'm, one against the other. This isn't about one being better than the other sort of collectively. It's about which one for you might like best. And like I said, I think if you take the stats away from paper and look at them all like this, you see three very different knives. And they all kind of offer something unique and different, and some positive, some negative. So there you go. That's my sort of comparison and walkthrough of these three budget knives. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think it was fun. These were fun for me to check out, and I was kind of excited to do this comparison for you all. I hope it was useful. More important than any of this, as always, please stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, and all the best.